surprisingly, the life of a German Shepherd.
And the
You don't know where we could score on some good grass, do you?
Gotcha.
Oh, shit.
blow your brains out! Blow your...
Guess who lives here?
I wonder what the odds are on that.
Don't move. Open your mouth, please.
Hammer.
Don't move.
To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie.
And the road leads to nowhere.
Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of the WayBack Movies podcast, a show where we review the best and not so best of 80s and 90s cinema, because really, fuck the 2000s. My name is Steve, and with me on this crazy journey,
Justin.
Doctor. And we're back. As we stated last week,
This is our first serious movie.
I think so. It's
As serious as this movie is.
Yeah.
Most of it.
this is a movie that is it is a notorious horror film.
Right.
Which is something,
Infamous, I believe.
which is something we're not going to cover too often. Like, I'm certainly not going to throw in, like, oh, next week we're going to watch I Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah.
Like, I can guarantee
This might be
we're
the
never
first,
going to get to that.
This might be the first and only time we do something this extreme.
Maybe. It is possible. I mean, again, we got time.
Never say never.
And at some point in time, there's a movie called Audition that is just as fucked up. So, but that being said, this week we're covering Wes Craven's first film, The Last House on the Left. It is a rough watch. One of the first gory films in existence. It is like we said, a horror film that is notorious and infamous for just its intensity, if you will.
Brutality.
Yeah. So, and it's the first sort of film of its kind, aside from like really underground shit that probably nobody ever heard of. But we'll get into all of the info on that once we get into the film itself. But, yeah, so we're just sort of, I kind of want to warn you beforehand just because we're going to talk about some shit that's just not fun.
We'll try our best.
We'll try our best to make as much light of it as we can because as the intro stated, it is only a movie. Right. So we'll try and make light of it as best as possible. But that being said, I guess we should just jump right in, yeah?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're going back to the year 1972. Whoa, there we are. So it is August 30th, 1972.
Almost to our limits.
Almost. Yeah, this is one of the farthest backs we're going to go, probably in general. But yeah, so I guess without further ado, let's talk about this ugly little picture. So it is written and directed by Wes Craven, in theory. Produced by Sean Cunningham, production company Sean S. Cunningham Films, Lobster Enterprises, and The Night Company. Distributed by Hallmark Releasing. No, not that Hallmark. Box office of $3.1 million against a budget of roughly $87,000, maybe $100,000. It's all over the place as to who's telling the truth on that.
It's hard to read box office, especially from the early 70s.
Oh, it's not just that. It's
plus you can fudge the numbers.
It's Wes, Sean, and the producers all giving different numbers.
Yeah.
Now, they were definitely given $100,000.
That's the ballpark figure.
That was definitely what they were given to make the movie, but
how much they spent?
Well, that was the thing. They were handed a check for $100,000, and their plan initially, and probably throughout the rest of it, was to pocket whatever they didn't spend. So, my guess is...
because they're all fucking kids at this point.
Yeah, they're in their early 20s. Although I think Wes was a little older just because he, as you remember from all the stuff we talked about with Wes, is he'd been around for a while doing other things. So I think he was like 27, 28 maybe. But he was, he didn't know how to make a movie. No one did. And we'll get to that as we go further. Which is also why I said directed by Wes Craven, kinda. So the cast. This is going to be interesting. Sandra Peabody, credited as Sandra Cassell as Mary Collingwood. Lucy Grantham as Phyllis Stone. David A. Hess as Krug Stillo. Fred Lincoln as Fred Weasel Podowski. Jeremy Rain as Sadie. Mark Scheffler as Junior Stillo. Eleanor Shaw, credited as Cynthia Carr as Estelle Collingwood. Richard Towers, credited as Gaylord St. James as Dr. John Collingwood. Marshall Anchor as the sheriff. Martin Cove as the deputy. And Ada Washington as Ada. So those are the only people involved. Now bear with me, there are a lot of notes because there is, much like the original Nightmare, there's a book on the making of this movie, which I do own and have read. So
There's a story here.
there's definitely stories involved in this, and it is not a pretty picture as well. So, anyway, Sean Cunningham made his directorial debut with a film called The Art of Marriage, which grossed $100,000. He was then given money to direct a better version called Together. These were sexploitation films commonly referred to as white coaters. A white coater is called that because it is in an effort to get around obscenity laws. These films were presented as educational films. The white coat refers to there always being a quote-unquote doctor in a white coat presenting footage of naked folks running around. If you think back to any kind of like old 60s porn, that's what they are. And that was literally because there were obscenity laws preventing you from showing that much footage. But if it's a quote-unquote documentary, you can show anything you want.
It's science.
Pretty much. And that's literally how they got away with it. Wes Craven, in an attempt to break into the movie business, got a job on Together Syncing Dailies, which is assembling sound and picture for the day's footage. That's where he met Sean. After reshoots, the original editor had to drop out, so Wes got the job, and he and Sean started to become friends. Now, if you weren't here for our original one, Sean Cunningham is the creator of Friday the 13th, as well as Wes being the creator of Nightmare on Elm Street. Basically, Freddy's dad and Jason's dad are buddies, and they work together on this hideous little film. Hallmark Releasing bought the film Together for $10,000. And when it was released, it was a hit, and it made $1 million. Hallmark.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money in
late 60s,
70,
early
I think.
70.
That's a hell of a lot of profit too. $10,000 to $1 million. That's fucking nuts. Hallmark came back and asked Sean to make a horror movie that could have porn in it if he wanted. And that they could release, and they gave him, again, this number is fudged every now and then. The one notes I have here says 90,000, which I got off of a different source. The book says 100,000, and I think the documentary that there is about it, they asked for 50. I don't know what the hell the fucking number was.
They made a profit.
Whatever. Well,
whatever the number is.
I mean, the movie ended up making $3 million.
So profit.
So that's a shit ton of profit. He asked Wes to write the scariest script he could think up. The result was a film called A Night of Vengeance, based very loosely on a Swedish film called The Virgin Spring by Ingmar Bergman, starring Max von Sydow.
Ooh.
In that film, set in medieval times, a girl is sent to take candles to a church. She is raped and murdered by two men on horseback. Then the men seek shelter at the girl's parents' home, and they are killed by the parents. Sound familiar?
Wes Craven loves taking stories from other people and...
Little bit. That's kind of his deal. If you look at everything Wes Craven does, he kind of like sees something, goes, you know what? I can do something in more. If I just
change the settings and make it a little bit more brutal?
A little bit.
I think I got something.
Yeah. So during the script rewrite and filming, the film was called Sex Crime of the Century, which is referred to in the movie. Fred Weasel says it to, at one point, very briefly, in the car scene, he says it to Krug. After test screenings were completed, it was decided to change the film's title to Krug and Company. However, the title was found to have drawn little interest in test screenings. Market specialist, who was an acquaintance of Cunningham's, proposed the title The Last House on the Left. Craven initially thought it was terrible, because he's like, what the fuck does that have to do with the movie? And he's right.
It has nothing
to do with the movie.
There's a house. I don't know what particular direction it's in.
It's not. I mean, it could be on the left depending on where you're standing. But I mean, if by last house you mean only house, sure. That works, right?
I mean, jeez. The last house on the right would have worked just as well, I guess.
Yes, if you were turned around the other way. Wes envisioned a film in which the violence would be shown in detail on screen. He felt that many popular films of the era, such as westerns, glamorized violence and the vigilante hero, and gave the public a misleading representation of death in the wake of the Vietnam War. He thought, in real life, if something terrible is happening, you can't just cut 10 minutes of your life. You're forced to deal with it in one way or another.
Watch the end of The Wild Bunch. You'll see some fucking violence.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way he puts it, you can see where he's coming from with this.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
Wes Craven's a smart guy.
Very much so. He's an academic. I mean,
Yeah.
he knew some shit. Wes based the character on Krug very, very, very loosely on his father, who, as he said, scared the shit out of me. The original script of the film was intensely pornographic, to the point of being absurd. When the actors were auditioning, they would audition with this version of the script. They all went to Wes and Sean and said, it doesn't need to be porn. They were promised the pornographic material would be replaced with a violence. But a lot of the mainstream actors they got didn't like how gruesome the script was, and Wes and Sean assured them that would be edited as well.
Listen, it's either boobs or it's blood.
Yeah, he was absolutely right, though, because this was very much a man writing the most fucked up shit he can think of and not thinking about the fact that this had to be put into a movie.
Yeah, because he probably went to the paper and went, I'm just going to write the most fucked up story I can possibly think of.
That was literally...
And then when he produced it to people, they're just like,
you
Wes,
can't do this.
We have to do this with real people.
Uh-huh. No. The actors were the ones doing it. Jeremy Rain, who was...
Hey, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, that was literally the case, because at one point in time, and I will just bear with me, there was a scene that was in the original script that had her biting and eating off one of the girl's boobs. And Jeremy basically said, I'm not doing that. And Wes went, you know what, you're probably right, I probably shouldn't. So he pulled back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I went a little too far on that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he knew when to pull back.
And redacted.
I mean, mind you, sometimes he didn't know when to pull back, but I'll get to that in a minute.
There's several parts of this movie could have,
Oh, no. We'll get there. We'll get there. Because of the original pornographic nature, they went to X-rated actors, and that's how they found Fred Lincoln and Lucy Grantham, who were actors of adult films. Lucy Grantham, I couldn't find much information on her, but apparently, according to the, what's it called, the commentary, which, if you ever want to hate a couple individuals, listen to the most recent DVD edition of Last House on the Left, because there's two editions. I have both of them. One of them
I think the most recent edition of this version.
Not
the...
Okay, so...
Because when you say most recent, this movie was remade.
Most recent version of the DVD for this film.
Okay.
The first one had a commentary, a very entertaining commentary with Wes and Sean, and the second DVD has a commentary with Fred Lincoln, David Hess, and Mark Scheffler. I will say, and I don't want to speak ill of the dead, so I will only because unfortunately David Hess has passed away. Mm-hmm. Fred Lincoln and David Hess are douchebags, and they talk about some shit in that I don't like, and they say some things about Lucy that I'm not a fan of, as well as Mary, and I'll get into some of that, but I will leave a lot of it out.
I'm going to guess that it was gross.
I will leave a lot of it out.
Just for the sake of...
For the sake of thing. I did leave some of it in because it is part of the making of the film, but I am leaving a lot of it out. If you want to hear it, go find it yourself. It's not hard to find. Yeah. I'm just not going to put that here.
Yeah.
But Lucy was apparently very rich. She, her father, had something to do with ice cream. He was, big into ice cream. I don't know exactly how. They weren't very clear. But apparently she was doing a lot of this to sort of make Daddy angry. So.
Rebellious.
Yeah. Making porn and things like that was just because...
Lucy was Phyllis, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Rebellious youth.
Yeah.
Especially in the early 70s,
But, I mean, she was, apparently, a sweetheart. They all loved her, so,
right. She's not a bitch. It's just that, she's her dad is probably some stuffier, ice cream baron or whatever.
Exactly. And
so she's just nah, I'm just going to go out and make wild sex
I'm just going to go fuck people on camera. Thanks, Dad. So, just one of those types of deals. Jeremy Rain was a friend of Fred's, and she got cast because, at the time, she was in a play about the Charles Manson murders.
Well,
it's if you're going to cast somebody... now, contrary to popular belief, Richard Towers did not change his name to Gaylord St. James because he was embarrassed.